This Tottenham Hotspur season preview edition of the Premier League Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by our Patreon. Score exclusive perks, content and contests, including our NFL win totals contest with a $1,000 prize. Join today at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. Welcome everybody to the Premier League Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. My name is Malcolm Bamford, coming to you from Newcastle upon Tyne in the northeast of England. We are cracking on with our 20-team season preview for the Premier League, which starts in exactly 1 week, minus 6 minutes from now. We are recording this on Friday night at 6 minutes past 8. So the EFL has kicked off, but the Premier League is 1 week away. And tonight we're going to have a look at Tottenham Hotspur. Lots to talk about here. Very interesting season upcoming for Spurs. Joining me from Bingham in Nottingham is Mr. Barry Penaluna. Good evening, Barry.
Evening, Malcolm.
How are you, son? What's happening?
I'm all good. We've got football. It's underway.
Has anyone scored yet?
No, but we've got.
You cashed any bets in the first 6 minutes?
No, but there's football. Real life football.
Real life actual football
involving men. Because we have seen.
I haven't had a bet tonight, Baz, because I didn't want to spoil myself because I knew I wasn't going to get to watch much of it. Because I knew we were sitting here for a long old time. So if time works out, I might get the live go in the second half. Because what I do want to watch is how the stoppage time and all that works, because I think they're going to do all the same things. We're already scheming our angles for next weekend when the Prem starts and how many extra goals there might be because of the extra time. And I'd like to see how it pans out tonight. That's just one of the reasons. And then you've got players like Adam Ward, James Ward-Prowse, players like that playing tonight for Southampton. So interesting stuff. But we're here to talk about Spurs, Baz. And this is definitely one of the more interesting teams to look at in terms of the possible outcomes. Because we just recorded Man City, Baz. There wasn't very many outcomes. To win it, if they have a shocking season, they might finish second or third. Tottenham have got all the outcomes. Absolutely, they could finish second under a fantastic managerial display. Or they could finish second bottom and it all completely and utterly goes tits up. And I think everything on the table is live. So it's going to be an interesting season. Any Spurs fans who have found us looking for a bit of Tottenham content before the season kicks off, you find us where you found us now, wherever you're listening. Apple, Google, Spotify. It is the Premier League Gambling Podcast. We are on Twitter at SGPN Premier. YouTube as well. We stream these shows live. Our bi-weekly pick shows. We give out picks for all the Premier League weekend action. We review it earlier in the week. We'll give out Champions League, EFL, international breaks, everything like that. You can follow us. So yeah, go and give us a like or a follow or a review or whatever you do on the particular platform that you're using. And we'll see if we can't turn up a couple of winners here. Because like I say, the whole gamut is in play, but Tottenham Hotspur finished 8th last year with 60 points. By the numbers, Baz, to win the Premier League next season, Tottenham are 50-1. For a top 4 finish, they are 4-1. The top 6 finish is 6-5 plus 120. To finish outside the top 6, they are 8-13 minus 161. Relegation is 80-1. A top half finish is 1-8 minus 800. The bottom half finish is 9-2. And on the handicap, Tottenham are getting a 25-point head start. So I think the odds are just about right. I mean, really, very much a tale of two halves last year for Spurs. They won 7 of the first 12 pre-World Cup. We're going along quite nicely. They then came back and won 5 of 7 from the restart through to March. But that seems like, Baz, it was absolutely years ago, because you can't really remember. The collapse was so spectacular that's like all you can remember. I remember them beating Manchester City early in the season. But apart from that, you can't remember positive Tottenham things because recency bias and the fact it was so shambolic. It was just unbelievable. They won 3 of the last 11, which included that Brighton game when there was the world record amount of awful VAR decisions. So in 3 of 11, we're lucky to do that. Yeah. There was that home defeat by Bournemouth, which we picked. We picked Bournemouth at around about 8-1. There was the 6-1 at Newcastle, which in that first 20 minutes, I was sitting there like head in hands. I just did not know what was going on. It was incredible. There was the hilarious, now you can look at it, although at the time it wasn't funny, the 4-3 at Liverpool. There was a home loss to Brentford. And the levels of performance just absolutely, completely fell off. So, I mean, can you try and surmise what happened last year, Baz? What did you see?
A lot of it came down to Conte, and he seemed to lose. We'd said for a while, and he'd obviously lost the team, lost the dressing room. It didn't help when he just started calling them out in public. And I think they stuck with it too long, didn't they? They really hung on to him for longer than they probably should have done. And then didn't go out and get a manager, which was a bit...
Well, they replaced him basically with his best mate.
Didn't they?
They replaced him without replacing him.
Yeah, that was a big mistake, keeping Stellini there. So nothing really changed. You know, they then tried to mix it up with Ryan Mason again. I think really, if they were going to get rid of Conte, they should have went for someone there and then. You know, the managers that were originally mentioned, it was like Sir Nagelsmann. Who else was being linked? I can't even think now who the other ones were. Lots of big names who were available at the time, and I felt like if they wanted them, just go get them. Very similar to Chelsea, who've done the same thing. They got rid of Graham Potter and brought in Lampard instead of just going out and getting what they wanted. Pochettino was obviously one of the other ones linked with coming back to Tottenham. I think they probably should have made an effort. I think by that point they just gave up on the season, didn't they? Towards the end, they really did give up on it. I don't think they were bothered about whether they got into the Europa Conference League or not. But yeah, you're right. There's very little positives to remember as a non-Spurs fan, and I would imagine if you're a Spurs fan, that would be even worse. Lots of negatives from last season.
So going forward, then we need to know what's changed. And still, at the time of us chatting, Baz, it's more questions than answers. Although obviously the biggest question is Harry Kane. I mean, I say it's 8:15 now on the Friday night, and I watched the news headlines at 7:00, and it was that Bayern Munich have put in their final bid for Harry Kane and expect an answer quickly, because that really is the keystone to Tottenham's entire season. So your gut feeling, Baz? I mean, I think he's gone. Where do you see him starting?
I think we've covered this at various points on other shows. And my opinion would always be that I think he's gone. The longer it goes on, the less convinced I am. I still lean towards that way at the moment, but I just don't know what Daniel Levy's game is. Personally, I think if they let him see out his contract and go for free next year, I think they're absolutely mad. If they're turning down 90 million, 95 million, something like that, for the sake of one more season of Kane, a season which is definitely a sort of season of transition. I don't see them competing for things next year. So I don't think it's like, let's hold on to Kane and we can do this, we can win this, we can get top 4. I think they're just keeping him for the sake of keeping him. And for me, if they get rid of him now, it's already possibly too late. I think if they were going to get rid of him, they should have done it by now and had time to spend that money and get another striker in. So I don't know what they're playing at. I never really know what Daniel Levy's playing at, and I don't think Spurs fans know what he's playing at. I would still lean towards him going. It sounds like he's very much keen on the idea of Bayern Munich, but also I think we get the impression he's not the type of player that is going to kick up a fuss, put in transfer requests or refuse to play, anything like that. So if Spurs keep playing hardball, Harry Kane might just think, well, I'll see it out for a year and then go next year. I think Spurs are mad if they do that. So yeah, we'll see. It's just a big unknown, but it's getting late, isn't it? Now in the day, this is why Man United pulled out of it. It's exactly what they anticipated. They reckon Man United were interested and said they weren't interested in pissing about negotiating with Levy for months on end, only to get to the transfer window and possibly not have a deal done. So they pulled out for that reason, and it's proven to be the case. Spurs will always play hardball, and see where it ends up.
I mean, so the possible positives for Tottenham, they've got a new manager, Ange Postecoglu. Did really well in the A-League in Australia. Went to Scotland with a really good reputation. Did nothing but enhance it. You can call into question how easy that was. Although we've seen Steven Gerrard and other people fail. So, and what I do like, he's quite easy to listen to. He's not one of these old dinosaur types. I think there's a part of that's the Aussie in him, because they're always quite engaged. And even we've just sat there with a summer of Ashes cricket and listened to Australians interview, and they do speak a little bit more candidly than a lot of other people. It's not heavy media training rubbish. So he's quite easy to listen to. He talks sense. Obviously, the St. James Maddison. I think the whole excitement with Maddison was to pair him with Kane, to get those little through balls, set pieces, whip those crosses in for him. Picked up a new goalkeeper, Vicario, which I think was important because Reece completely and utterly shot his bolt. I think that game at Newcastle broke him, where he went off at half time with a fractured ego. And so, yeah, that's the thing is, do you think Postecoglu can get them going or not? The defence, Baz, looks horrible. And they've done barely anything to address it. Actually, the breaking news there, an hour ago, was the Ajax defender, what's his name?
I know.
Van der Men. Yeah, Mickey van der something or other. To shore it up a bit. Because you look down that, and Tottenham's, they've got songs about how bad their defenders are. That's kind of their affectionate crackers to tell you how bad each defender is. Eric Dyer on the slide, Emerson Royal, Romero just looked mentally shot. Pedro Porro did okay. He'd score you a really good hard volley at one end in a 4-1 defeat. Sanchez, Shambles, there's not much else in there, really. They did miss Bentancur.
I was looking, because we'll come on to Fantasy League stuff towards the end here. But you look at the Fantasy Premier League and you look at how long the list of defenders is there. It's a list of shit defenders. But
it's awful. It's horrible.
Dyer, Perisic, Royal, Romero, Porro. That's 6. We've then got Sessegnon, Sanchez, Spence, Tanganga. That's 10. Reguilon, Rodon, Udogi. 13 defenders on the list there. And yet, Tottenham fans will tell me they're desperate for 2 defenders, which you can understand why. They need 2 centre-halves. So, yeah, they're not short of defenders, but they are short of quality at the back, I think. They have, as you say, Porro is signed now for 40 million. He was on loan last year, and that became permanent. And
there's one striker listed as well, one forward. We talked about this with them. Manchester United only having Martial listed as a striker. And I know it's a part of the modern game where Richarlison, whatever, listed as midfielders. But you've got one forward listed, not one good one and a couple of reserves. You've got one. And he's about to jump on a plane to Germany. We'll make some bets, Baz. I'll tell you about our Patreon. First here, the Sports Gambling Podcast. Patreon, fighting the good fight against corporate gambling. Is the place to be. You'll get things like the SGP Stories podcast, ad-free, uncensored show, highlighting the best stories from decades of being degens. The NFL Win Totals Contest is a belter. $1,000 first place prize. There's a Discord channel just for the patrons. All our free picks and content is on there. sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. So, lead us off, Baz. We said this could go one of 2 ways. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Which way did you have it going, and what picks did you make as a result?
Well, I wrote my notes for this about a week ago, because we were supposed to be doing this podcast with somebody else who ghosted us. I also contacted a friend of mine who's a Spurs fan, see if he'd fancy coming on the show with us, and he couldn't because he was off on holiday to Thailand. But Mike did give me his lowdown on where he thinks
like
they're at. He said it's probably just as well he doesn't come on our show because he's not sure he could be very polite about Spurs at the moment.
Oh, he'd fit in beautifully, Baz.
I know. I don't think he listens to our show. He doesn't realise how impolite we can be about Spurs or others. He said unless they sort the Kane situation out now, he thinks they're in big trouble. And he said if Kane's going to go, it needs to happen now and not at the end of August. He also reckons they desperately need 2 centre-backs and another striker to help Richarlison on the assumption that Kane's going to go. He fears the club have already shafted Postecoglu before he's even started. And he said, if they got the 2 centre-backs in and they got another striker in to go alongside Richarlison, he'd fancy them of potentially squeezing back into the top 6. But he says the later it goes on, the less time there is to gel. Coming in too late, we're only a week away from the season now. He says if those centre-backs don't sign, he can see them leaking goals. And he thinks they're looking at a top half finish at best. Is his ambition, well, not his ambitions, but his expectations for this season is they're in a battle to finish top half as it stands at this point. And I assume, that's on the assumption Kane will go. He pointed out, and I think we picked this up last year, was Spurs will leak goals and over, across the season, things like over 3 goals, both teams to score in the games will be worth keeping an eye on, particularly if they don't fix the problems in defence. So for me, I think Spurs to finish bottom half at it was 130 plus 330.
I got 92 Baz for that price, man.
Got 92. I wrote this down a while ago, so that they're obviously getting, I don't know. People must be fancying them a bit more. The bottom half, I don't mind, but then I looked at teams who I think will definitely finish above them, and then look for a price around that. City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Man United, Newcastle. There's 5 who I think definitely finish above Spurs this season. So then for Spurs to finish bottom half, you've still got to find another 5. Chelsea, Villa, Brighton. Then it gets tight. So I think...
Yep.
I think it's hard to back them bottom half because 10th is there, it's up for grabs, and Spurs are definitely the best of the rest in terms of the teams we've, outside of the teams I've just mentioned. So I looked for teams in and around the same area in the market as Spurs and look for a team that I think will finish above them. And for me, it's Aston Villa. I can get Aston Villa at 11-8 to finish above Spurs. And I really like the look of that. Sorry?
That's an unbelievable bet.
Yeah, we're all... everyone we spoke to on the show recently, and we have both said we think Villa will get stronger. At the moment, there's nothing to suggest to us Spurs are going to have any major resurgence. So I like the look of that. It's Villa to finish above Spurs, so it's a fade of Spurs rather than a Spurs pick. But I think Villa finishing above Spurs is the one for me. That's at 11-8.
Okay. Did you see Southampton have scored, Baz? So you're halfway to cashing your first bet of the season. Nathan Teller. Well, yeah, the hashtag free Teller was going mad last week with Burnley. We talked about a Burnley guy and they wanted Teller. He's on the score sheet. That's probably going to cost him an extra few quid now. My thinking was exactly the same as you, Baz, of the which way they're going to go up or down question. I think Spurs need time. And I don't think Postecoglu is going to get it, unfortunately. It's just a bit of a poison challenge, that job at the moment. And the fans are sick, like they've had enough. So I don't think Postecoglu is really going to have the time he needs. I do think they're going to lose Kane and they're just going to concede a ton of goals. The same reasons, Baz, as you. I was looking at the same bet. I'm happy to take them to finish in the bottom half at 92. You're effectively looking at maybe the top 8. It's then a match bet with the teams around them. Say Aston Villa, Brighton, Brentford are one. So I've got 3 picks here for Tottenham to finish below. Brentford are 5-1, which is a great price. Finish now. There's this you might bulk at this one a little bit, Baz. To finish below Wolves is 11-1. And like I say, Wolves are the team that I've got a little bit higher than most. So I've actually got Wolves in. I've got in my league table, I've got Tottenham 10th and Wolves 11th. But that close together, 11-1, you're going to take the 11-1 shot over those. And the other one is a team I think are going to go well. Is Nottingham Forest. Forest to finish higher than Tottenham is 14-1. So I've got Forest up in 13th place. Again, we get Tottenham in the bottom half, and we'll start cashing bets as they sink down. We'll start with Villa. We'll cash a 5-1 as they pass Brentford. We'll cash an 11-1 as they sink below Wolves. We'll cash a 14-1 as they drop below Forest. Baz, we're going to be rich.
Yeah, I think it's, we could look very foolish with a lot of these, couldn't we? Let's be honest.
Oh, yeah, when they finish third, we look like right tits.
You're not backing Forest to finish above them because you think Forest will finish above them. It's purely value, isn't it? You're looking at, how close you see them and how close the bookies see them. And if you're seeing value where a price just looks a bit too big, then we take it. We take our chances on it, don't we?
Yeah, because you're going to cash in one of those, Brentford, Wolves, or Forest, and you make a little bit of money. Like obviously, if they finish in the top half, then so be it. But that's why we're in this business, Baz. You pay your money and take your choice. We'll look at some FPL options in a moment after I've told you about Underdog Fantasy. The NFL season is right around the corner. Underdog Pick'em is the best way to get down on a ton of NFL player props. If you Tottenham fans might go to the NFL, this might interest you. Loads of opportunities to win the daily MLB contests, and make sure to enter Best Ball Mania 4, where the first prize is $3 million. Head to underdogfantasy.com, use the promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. That's underdogfantasy.com, promo code SGPN. Right, fantasy stuff, Baz. It does kind of revolve around Kane. I know you're the FPL man, Baz, so hit us with anything that jumps off this squad that you just 5 minutes ago slagged off, Baz.
I mean, it's hard, isn't it? We've got Kane, obviously, 32 goals last year. Perisic also had 12 assists last year. Last season, Kane had 263 points. Son was only on 152. Disappointing season for him last year, but still 152 seems like a big score in a season where he appeared to do nothing. So not bad. Maddison last year with 135 for Leicester, but he did miss quite a bit of time as well, so I'd expect him to go higher in terms of his points tally. The problem with Kane, if he stays, you would want him in your team, that's fine, but he's priced at 12.5 million, and it's almost impossible to take him and Haaland, and we feel you have to have Haaland. I mean, points-wise, there wasn't much between the two of them last season, but Haaland just seems to have that. If you haven't got Haaland and you're not captain Haaland, you're always watching in fear that he's going to get 3s and 4s, whereas Harry Kane is just a consistent goal a week, every week. Haaland can hit the big scores, which is what you need. So Kane, as I say, I just can't get him in alongside Haaland. You'd be spending more than 25% of your budget on your first two players. It's a big ask. Defensively, would worry me a bit until I've seen a bit more of Postecoglu's Spurs. There's a suggestion they'll be playing a 4-3-3, but with really attacking fullbacks. And that would worry me with the defence, the sort of centre-backs they've got. How exposed are they going to be? The likes of Dyer and Romero. So at the moment, I would like to see how Spurs are setting up and how they start off defensively before I consider any of them. If they've got those really attacking fullbacks, then of course that could become an option. Someone like Porro, Perisic, Udogie is one that's been mentioned. But definitely wait and see. I think so far for me, for Spurs, in total, it's wait and see. I can't see Kane finding my squad simply because of the price and simply because I have to have Haaland. You'd want to see Son rekindle some form before he was considered. He's still a big price. He'll have dropped back a little bit, but Son is still 9 million. And Maddison, I'd just like to see how Maddison fits into the team. Maddison could definitely become an option. He's one I could see becoming an option if he gets off to a good start. 7.5 million. So Maddison definitely on the watch list. And as I say, I think I've got Porro on the right on the watch list in terms of those attacking returns from a defensive point of view. But initially, I don't see any of them making my starting lineup.
Yeah, I didn't have much at all, Baz, really. I mean, Richarlison is an option if Kane goes, which is
absolutely
been a popular Twitter sort of play. A lot of the FPL accounts have been throwing that out because he's a midfielder. He's going to be playing through the middle. He's relatively cheap. He's going to be in the same price bracket, if not cheaper, than a lot of other players. And as someone who not plays second fiddle, I think he's like. But other than that, like I say, Maddison, the value goes if Kane goes. Son has got too many questions to answer at the moment. And say until you know how Tottenham are going to go and who he's going to play, we've got new signings coming in. We're recording this a week out before the season, so there's options to change it. But as it stands, won't be for me. We do have a listener league. Any Tottenham fans who are listening in who want to join us, we've got some money available. We've got 150 quid in cash and some merch and the Egg Cup. And the glory that goes with that. The listener league code is CVVQAB. That is Calderwood, Van der Vaart, Quilt, Anderton, Bentancur. You might be asking why I said Quilt if you can't remember a Tottenham player called Johnny Quilt. That's because there's no Q's, Baz. We looked down the whole list, didn't we? First name, surname, and the history of Tottenham, no Q's. So I did think Darren Anderton was a bit of a wet quilt one back in the day. So it was all kind of linked in. CVVQAB, come and play. Any other Tottenham crack bars before we let these good people go?
No, that's it for me. Hopefully there's an end to the Kane saga soon, so we can all work out exactly where we should have Kane, where we should have Spurs in our predicted tables for this year.
Correct. Thanks everyone for listening. Like I say, go and find our regular content. Hopefully you'll enjoy it as the season cracks on. Good luck with any bets you're having. Until the next time, we'll see you down the road.